All right, welcome back to another podcast. I'm Joshy K, joined again with Mikey Mike. How you going?
Yeah, great. How are you?
Good. Thought we'd continue on from our last session. We were talking about the different stages throughout the financial planning process. People can get advice going from your first job all the way through to transferring assets when you get to that age. Thought we'd do a quick 1 minute recap before we jump into stage 2.
Yep.
So
Good idea.
we'll go back to the first job. We quickly talked about some things people will need when they first get into that, being your tax file number, choosing a super fund, getting on top of your pay slips, understanding how it works, including taxes, things like that. Once you've achieved that, it's of that income that's now coming through, how do you start to budget and think about the next steps in your life, whether it's saving for a house or making sure you can get your first car, those types of things.
Yep.
So I thought we'll jump into the next section, which is, you've probably had a job for a couple of years now, you're probably more thinking, I guess, career as opposed to job.
Yeah.
So
Like done your uni studies or getting towards the end of uni studies, you say uni plus a couple of years working.
And that's the thing, once you start building those careers, sometimes it's a trade, so you might have been doing your apprenticeship going to TAFE, or you might go the more professional route or education route, so you're doing your potentially help debt or HECS or paying up front. So all this comes back to the budgeting and how do you fit work in with those other obligations you've got to build your career. We then start thinking about, you might attract a partner. So it's now how do we have joint goals and start thinking about our finances as a couple and saving together. So it's quite a bit to unpack just in those stages. There's so many different directions you can go. And that's something that I'm quite passionate about, helping your younger people, not just your retirees, because we used the analogy last time around, if you've got that plane leaving Launceston, it's heading up to Cairns, if that plane's off by 1 degree, by the time you travel a few thousand kilometres, you've missed the mainland entirely.
Yep.
So to me, that comes down to when you're in your 20s and 30s, you want to make sure you're on that right track. So by the time you go to retire at 60 or 65, you don't come and see Michael and I and we say, sorry, you've been going off track for so long, it's going to take you 5 years to pull everything back in.
Yep. So I was just thinking while you were speaking, maybe a couple of things jumped into my head. One was maybe do a deeper dive on the budgeting side of it, like when you start getting surplus cash flow saving for something, and some tools and techniques there from sharing your wisdom. And I think the other one was, when you do find a partner, when do you have, what's the pros and fors and against for joint accounts, joint savings, all that sort of stuff, if you're saving for something together. So
yeah, both big topics, and that's where we're trying to go a little bit more macro. I'll zoom in a little bit, but we could separate them a little bit. So budgeting, the first thing, it's telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. That's the simplest form of budgeting. What you don't want to do, I guess, is find yourself constantly behind the ball. You're starting to think about things like Afterpay, credit cards, you start getting into debt. We've previously spoken about lifestyle creep being a factor as well, which is basically you go on a holiday, you think this is quite nice, let's do it more regularly. Now it becomes the default. Next thing you know, you've got Netflix, Disney, Amazon, there's all those different subscriptions and that becomes the norm. So again, budgeting is just whether you're single or as a couple, it's designing your ideal lifestyle and again, telling your money where to go based on categories that are important to you. So we all have to have somewhere to live, so rent, mortgage, they're kind of your defaults. Ideally, if you're living in a house, you've got power to turn lights on, so electricity, water, but then there's always optional or discretionary expenses as well. So as a couple deciding, do we want to budget for things like massages and doctors, and do we pay for private health cover? There's so many different elements.
Any tools or techniques that you, in 30 seconds, you could share?
Well, we've got a spreadsheet, so feel free to give us a contact if you'd like access to that. Look, I find most banking apps do a pretty good job of tracking expenses these days.
And then just defining, what are the categories of expenses, and then just tracking what you are spending on. Yeah,
so the macro ones would be, again, living. So I look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've got those fundamental things people need to take care of. So it's shelter, like we mentioned, electricity, water, those types of things. Food would be another one. And then after that, you start going extra. So it's, when I stay somewhere outside of my home, is it a holiday house, Airbnb? When it's food, is it now takeout? You've got those extra layers to those expenses.
I can't think the right term, but it was sort of like how many different apps people subscribe to or streaming services. A term someone mentioned the other day to me, I thought, that's an interesting term, that they just, basically fatigue of so many different subscriptions. And I think I might have shared on a previous one of unfortunately twice in the last 6 months my credit card's been hacked and had to restart, and it's been quite refreshing because you've got to go and restart. And so it was a good discussion for Jenny and I. Is that, do you really need that extra subscription? Or
yeah, you can be a bit more intentional about how your money's being spent instead of it just happening.
That's right. Yeah, so KO stayed, but we shelved a couple of others. And we thought, I probably don't need 5 different subscriptions on entertainment. So
yeah, look, it's a good model, and again, sticking with budget. I know you said a minute or less, but you know what I'm like. I can go for ages on things I'm passionate about, but finding fun ways to do the budget. It doesn't have to be a. I guess people hear the term budget and think scarcity, restriction. I can't do that. Whereas to me, it's a real enabler for the kind of life you want to live. So so my advice would be, and this is where I can say this, it's not just personal advice, but if you go to our website, check my bio, I've got a recommendation there that says I encourage everyone to create 2 budgets. So the first one is I want to track exactly what you're spending, because we need to know what reality is.
Yeah.
Second one, when you start with a blank budget planner and go, as a couple, if we were to allocate money to these particular line items, how much would we need to earn to live the kind of life we want to live?
Yeah.
That then leads into, well, this is how we need to earn our income as a couple. Does that mean I need to go to TAFE or university to earn a higher income? Do I need to start a business, take on a second job? It can really help direct
stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's more common than not these days. Naturally, the more income you earn, that affects tax. So that's where, how do I reduce the tax so more's getting up in our bank account? Yeah. So it's all interrelated, and it's hard not to double click on many things because they all are. And you mentioned tax there. I'll just sort of put my 20 seconds worth in on that. So often the conversation is about, I don't want to earn much more because I pay higher tax. You do pay a higher tax bracket, but even jumping to say the 30-cent tax bracket, you're still getting 70 cents in the dollar, government gets 30. So the messaging for me is like, don't be afraid to earn more money. Yes, you pay a bit more tax, but you're still a net winner. So yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to say no to $1 because someone's going to take 30 cents because you're still missing out on the difference. Right. And that 70 cents can help you live the kind of life you want to lead. Yeah. So that is a very good point. Yeah. And you previously touched on, I guess, the marginal tax rates as well. So it's not you earn $1 more and now they take 30% of your whole income. Yeah. That's happened. It's a progressive system.
Yeah, that's right. I was only with a client this morning who's sort of my age, and I reminded him because he said, I don't want to pay tax on earning more dollars from these jobs. And I said, well, earn $1,000 over that bracket, you're still only paying 30 cents in the dollar on that $1,000, not on the first 45,000. So
and that's the thing. That's where you start talking difference between a marginal tax rate and your average tax rate when you factor in things like the tax-free threshold. So probably a whole other episode on that. So
maybe double click, because you mentioned about budgeting as a couple, so I'll be interested to unpack that a little bit more. What's worked for you, or you observe on when you do have a relationship and you're jointly saving, and how do you jointly pay bills, you have a joint bank account, all those sort of questions. Do you have any sort of words of wisdom?
So I'll dive a little bit of that, but I'm going to tread very carefully just in case Beck's watching this. So I won't use us as an example. But any clients who come to see me, certainly I use Beck as the example. One that I've seen or commonly see is you often get 2 different money mindsets from a couple. And the example that comes to mind is if you've had, let's say the male, he's come from a divorced household, money was quite hard to come by, everything was quite stressful to talk about, and you kind of, in the same way that most of us speak English with an Australian accent, because that's what we grew up with, you adopt the money mindsets of the people you surround yourself with. The other partner who they coupled with recently was from a family of business owners, and so if you needed more wealth, you just created it. It was great, well, it's just making your opportunity, and so very different ways of approaching money that's in the bank. One would look at it as dry gunpowder, how do we deploy this to put ourselves in a better position? From the other person's perspective, that was their safety, that was their life jacket. So getting people together, really unpacking their money mindset, and I guess giving them the space to talk about their background so you can create joint money goals is really important, because you don't want 2 people who get together to then diverge over time. Next thing you know, you're 40, you're talking about divorce, you lose half of what you built. It's really important to stay connected and have someone facilitate those conversations.
And I can share for Jenny and I, and
we'll tread carefully.
We went in joint bank accounts, and we've been married for 30 odd years, and I do remember Jenny was a better saver than me, so she used to, where she used to work, they used to pay her bonus checks back in the day every year, and she would put it in a term deposit and just keep rolling up around. And then when we got married, we bought a car jointly, and all of her savings went to the joint car. So I always remember that was a really big sacrifice for Jenny. So we've always done the joint stuff. Budgeting, if I was brutally honest, would come and go. Even last night, Jenny said, "We don't have a budget anymore, do we? We just spend. We know what we spend." And yeah, I won't sugarcoat it. Like, we've done the joint stuff the whole way through, so it's been a good conversation. But even 30 odd years later, we were having a debate last night about who spends what. Not anything like he spends, she spends, but a reminder for myself: when do you consult with your partner about discretionary spend, and when do you just have that freedom to go and do it? So
yeah, and that could probably lead into the last bit to wrap that up. Then, to keep this video short and sweet, would be sometimes there's value in having a discretionary account that you each have, where you say $50 a week. We each get into our separate savings account. I don't have to ask you for permission. I can do what I want with it. Probably also handy if you ever want to buy your partner a gift and don't want them seeing where you spent the money too. But that can also be a good way to, at least when you're starting, before it feels too intimidating to start jumping into major joint accounts and major joint purchases like a home. It's set up your separate savings so you still maintain your independence, but then still focusing on how you achieve things as a couple.
Yeah, I think it's great tips, and I think there's no one size fits all. I think the important thing is to have a conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. I know Scott Papen used some of his educational materials, talk about the date night where you get to go to your partner and you focus on your finances and do a check-in, whatever that looks like for you as a couple. But I think it's it's just important to find your own rhythm, but it is a conversation that you do have rather than sort of shelve it and sort of say, we come from two different backgrounds, like the example you quoted, but you work together over time as a couple to work out what's best for you, regardless of your backgrounds.
Yeah, agreed. Very good. I think that was a nice little wrap up for today. Again, we'll continue the series. There's so much to get through, so much to unpack. I would encourage those listening, reach out if there's something that you wanted us to double click on a little bit more, because we're always looking for ideas on what people find entertaining and educational. As a reminder, nothing we talk about is personal advice. We don't exactly know who's watching, but we're trying to just give some hints and tips and get you thinking about some questions you should be asking or considering.
Excellent.
Very good.
Thanks, Josh.
We'll see you in the next one.